to be purple and the pattern to be dashed. But the cut lines, I want those to be blue. And I want them to be very, very thick. And say OK. And using this local override now, I can do something like that. So you get a little bit more flexibility when you go for local overrides rather than for full building override. Christine told me she could keep the air conditioning turned on here, but oh well, we got the saute. Sorry. I'll work harder on that one next time. Okay. So that's the difference between local overrides and full model overrides, and also the difference between cutting and projection. Are there any questions about that? Great. We're going to move right along. Now, there's a place on your panel called Additional Settings. And I don't know about you guys, but it took me a long time to go screw around over there. But when I did, I realized that there's a lot of really essential stuff that makes your documents look like your documents as opposed to someone else. Don't know how to do. These are all the line styles that are in there. If you go to Additional Settings and you go to Line Styles, you got lines, and all you have to do is hit New. Enter the name here. I'll call it LL Purple Dash. And it's going to be a subcategory of lines, right? Because lines is the category. Okay. And I can set it up so that I want it to be purple. That looks like purple. And I want it to be dashed. And let's say I want it to be thicker too. And I'll say OK. And now, move this over to the side. If I pick the line, over here in the properties of it, I get a line style. And I can pick purple dash. And it becomes my purple dash. And you can do this for as many different lines as you might want. But this is only if you want to draw lines. Typically, we don't want to draw lines in Revit. We want to use objects. However, when you want to make your drawings look like something, if you want to put a property line on the site plan, bring something in from AutoCAD or something like that, you can make line styles to do it. These lines, whether you're in a detail view like I am here, whether you're drawing in effectively 2D, or also if you're doing it in 3D. So if I come into 3D and let's say I draw a model line instead, this line can also be one of my LL purple dash lines too. Revit really doesn't care where you use the lines, if they're in 2D view, 2D drafting views, or as annotative lines, detail lines, model lines, doesn't care. Once you've set up the style, it'll roll with it. Kind of handy, another one of those things that took me a long time to figure out because, well, I wasn't looking at it. Okay, questions about categories and what have you. I have a microphone up here too, so if you have a question, you don't even have to shout. You can stay quiet and we'll give you the microphone. Okay? How many of you guys use view templates in your current workflow at your offices right now? How many of you guys set them up yourself or they were given to you? Project team to use for documentation, you really have to know how this works. And what you can orient to a view. And you can pick floor plans, sections, or whatever's there. I'm going to say my level 2 floor plan. And it will automatically cut. It'll set a section box to the extent of that 3D floor plan, or to the extent of your floor plan, including the depth of the view. Man, when they showed me this, I thought that was the coolest thing because it made it very easy to start understanding how floor slabs and stuff work. I thought that was really cool. And it's even cooler that you can go, that you can do sections too. I think that's pretty epic as well, frankly. Wow, okay. Really quick, really easy ways to set up views of your building. Good stuff, huh? Okay. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to orient to a view, and I'm going to say I want it to be level 2. And it goes ahead and it does it. Now, I have a couple of things going on in here. I have my architecture model, and I have overlaid the structural model on top of it. I promise. See? The structural model. But the problem here, of course, is how do I see what's what? How do I know what the structural model is versus the architect's model? Well, that's where view overrides come in. So we're not going to look at the whole model at this point. I'm just going to do a single view override for just this view. I'm going to type VV, and I get my model categories and stuff here. Okay, cool. I'm going to override structural elements within my model. So let's just tick on structure. And yep, I want structural elements, so I'll just pick all. I'm going to tell it I want the patterns. Let's make it all sort of pink and solid. And say OK. And then for the cut sections, let's say red and solid. And say OK. OK. That is really not helpful. I'm going to assume that some of you guys know what went wrong in this, but not everybody. When you're doing, let me back out of this. It just controls you. Beautiful. When you're doing an overlay kind of model, and now I can pick everything in here, and if I pick everything in here and say, okay, give me the surface patterns of pink and solid, and I go for the cut patterns of red again and solid, and say okay, and say okay, and I say okay. Oh, that's so happy. Now I can kind of tell what's going on here. This is dynamite. This is really good. Now I can look and I can see where columns are kind of, well, wait a second, why is the structural column there, but the architect hasn't picked that one up yet? And while we're at it, why are the structural columns so much bigger than the architect's columns? Here's another whole area where there's a bunch of structural columns, but there's no architect's columns. That's got to be a really spacious closet. Good stuff, huh? Okay, now, but wait, there's more. These two, and it'll turn off the analytical model categories in the view altogether. Bye-bye. Much better. Now this is starting to look like something I can use to do some coordination. A little bit of mismatch and go, weird stuff going on in that canopy, that's for sure. Okay? So, I don't need to, this is a coordination model. I don't need to see that thing in here either. Let's go in and architecture. I'm going to turn off site stuff I don't want to see, and I don't want to see topography either. Let's say, okay, turn those guys off. Okay, great. So now I've got this cool view of level 2. It's all set up for coordination purposes. I'm going to save it though. Okay, right now it's my 3D view. Right click, duplicate with detailing. If I just hit duplicate, all my overrides go away. So duplicate with detailing. F2. And let's call this L2 structural overlay. Kind of. So let me go to my 3D view for a second here. And okay, here we go. If I save this L2 structural overlay, what I can do now is, let's say I want to apply it to a couple of other views. So you see, here's my level 1, here's my level 3, here's my roof. Let's say I want to apply those same overrides. You know, here's a coordination section. I want to do a close-up on this, but it's still kind of difficult to see what's going on there. All I have to do is go to View. I'm going to make a view template based upon the settings I've put into this view. I'm going to say Create Template from Current View. Enter name here. Let's call it Mickey Mouse. Why wouldn't you call it Mickey Mouse? And here's that panel. It's going to ask me, well, which parameters do you want to apply? And I could pull some of them off if I wanted to. Okay? But I'm just going to leave Mickey the way he is and say, okay. Ooh, I got a lot of sections open. I don't need that. L2 structural. So now I got my views and stuff here, right? If I pick all of these guys, I can apply a view template to all of them at one time and say Mickey Mouse. And they all done turn pink, just like that. Isn't that cool? And if I want to look at my little section, now all of a sudden my section, okay, now I can start to kind of see what's going on in here. I can see what's architecture and what's structure, and this is a little bit more helpful. Isn't that awesome? There you go. If you didn't know that, you learned something tonight. Okay? So that's view templates. I loves me some view templates. I think they're the coolest thing in the world. Now, let's talk about plan overlays, though. This is all well and good, but sometimes you got to make. There's still a lot of architects and people in this world that just don't think in 3D yet, no matter how much we try, and they really want to see floor plans. Reza, right? You know how to do it for 2D floor plans? You want to do it? No, that's a joke. I got to do this. I'm not the one getting paid up here. You know? I do this for fun and for free because somebody's got to do it. Okay, for the floor plans, I don't do this much anymore, but so here's a floor plan of level 2, and I need to see the beams through it. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite as cool with, it's not quite as easy to do overlays with Revit as it is like in AutoCAD. You just take one CAD file and put it on the other. The key thing with Revit, if you want to do overlays, you've got to go to a hidden line view. Or, I'm sorry, you've got to go to a hidden line view. You got to go to a wireframe view. And then you can see the structure through the bottom. Beautiful. But that's really not that beautiful because, again, it's all black lines. It's kind of difficult to see what the heck's going on in there. So, again, all I'm going to do is go into my Revit links for a second, change that to custom view, go to my model categories, change that to custom, take all of them, excuse me. Again, and then I'll just change the lines, and I'll make all the lines red and not that thickness. Make them all red and dashed, and say OK. The cut lines, I'll do the same thing, red. Post on my BIM Troublemaker blog many years ago when I figured out how to do this, except for I used an LTA train station to illustrate it. And boy, my boss over at Eric freaked out. He's like, you can't put a train station on the bidder. Oops. Pulled that blog post down. But so this is a quick and easy way. And again, you can set this up as a view template now View templates. Create template from current view. Let's call it red plan. And say OK. If I go into my, let's say, third level, here you go, same model. I'll just apply view template. There you go. You can have a whole series of sectional overlays done like that. How's that for value? Thank you. That's right. I love it. Okay, any questions about that? Anybody got questions about that kind of stuff? Going once, going twice. I'll just minimize that. But somebody will probably have a question later. That's always the way. So, far clipping makes a difference. It really does. I'm going to go ahead, I'm just going to create a view in the model to illustrate this. Uh-oh. Somebody's in trouble. Okay, so here's my model, and let's say I want to make a camera view from this back corner here. Camera. And I just sort of draw it out to there. Now, there's this thing called far clip active. I didn't do this very well. Let me try this again. I'm going to make my camera. I want to have the guy standing here and looking at that. Much better. Where the hell's the rest of my building? Oh shit. Somebody done cut off the building. Now, if you have any experience at all with setting up cameras and doing renderings, there's a concept called far clip, and what that does is it limits the distance that the camera is looking. Now, that can be very, very helpful on projects that are really, really massive, because it allows you to cut out a lot of polygons behind things that you don't particularly want to see. In this example, though, it's not particularly helpful. You can control that using this box. I can tell it right now it's at 55, let's say 75 meters. Ah, there's the rest of my building. And all it's really doing, nothing like that. Yeah. All I've really done is if I come in here for a second and, let's see, what is this, 3D view 2? I'm going to say show camera. There's my camera. There's this option that I have, and I can pull and really focus the length of my camera so that I can see the whole building, if that's what I want to do. I can pull this guy back a little more, come in here. You see the building ain't there. Okay? So that's far clipping, and that's an important concept to make your views look right, or to at least have some control over them. Oopsie. Let's make sure I got the whole thing. Very nice. Okay. Get that here. That's a good enough view. Fantastic. I'm so happy. So now, what I wanted to walk through in here is this doesn't use lighting controls. And of course, there's realistic, which actually pulls the material renders out of the materials you've assigned to the various objects in the model. When you do materials, you'll see these guys here, these are special trees in Revit. They're RPC trees that have images mapped to them. Sometimes you'll use them, sometimes you won't. Anybody who's had me for an advisor knows that I've got a trick up my sleeve about trees. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the category that Revit uses for these and puts them in planting, they don't play along with you very well. They're not very good in their overrides. And you'll see that as we go through this exercise. So those are all your basic ones. There's ray trace, which you'll sit here for quite some time and wait for that thing to process. And that'll give you a really, really beautiful rendering. but it's going to take a while. Shit. Stop. Damn, why did I do that for? Oh!
Kilo.
Close. Close. I don't want no interactive ray tracing. Okay. Great. So let's go back to shaded for a second. Now, if anybody's ever told you that Revit can't do good graphics, they're lying. And they don't know what they're talking about. And this panel is kind of what I want to spend some time talking about. This is all the different options that you can go through. So, shaded, wireframe, blah, 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 just like this down below. Beautiful. You can show edges or not. You can change the transparency. We'll go through a lot of these things. But the first one I want to talk about is shadows. And you can choose to cast shadows or not. So I'm going to say cast shadow and say apply. And you'll see that my building gets very dark. Does that mean I shouldn't cast shadows? Oh, shadow no good, wow. I go home. No. You guys aren't quitters. We find other solutions. So in order to make a shadow, what do you need? You need a flashlight. And if you got a flashlight, you might as well make some finger puppets too. And you can play Little Buddy Foo-Foo, right? No. You need a light source. They've done this kind of funny. The light source is down in the lighting, and you can change the direction of the light pretty easily until you find one you like. Top right, not so much. Top left? Okay, that's getting a little bit better. You see, it's changing the direction of the shadow. Summer solstice? No, not so good. Winter? Still not so good. I'm going to say from the top left again, but I can start to adjust the altitude of the sun. Let's see if I adjust the altitude of the sun. Ooh! Or maybe the azimuth of the sun. Azimuth. Ah, now we start to get some shadows. Ah, ooh, now it's starting to look kind of sexy, huh? Anybody getting excited? I'm getting excited. Oh, okay, we start to get something in there, okay? We can start to adjust the light position. Just as well, we can also have the ability to show ambient shadows, which is not the hardline shadows, but let me tick that and you'll see, hopefully, all of a sudden it'll soften the view up a little bit. Kind of good, huh? You don't have to show the regular shadows, and you can have something that looks kind of like this, and it'll still give you a little bit more depth. So when you're doing these views, you can add, shadows help add some depth, and that's quite helpful. Good? I'm so glad they printed this out for me. If not, I'd be completely lost. Now, the other thing, while I'm on the topic of lighting, I'm going to turn my shadows back on again. We can also control the intensity of the lighting. Okay? Right now, it's fairly soft. Let's say we want this thing to be really harsh. Whoa. We can improve on the ambient light as well. We can start to do, we can really crank up the sun and take out the ambient light. We can start to do a lot of things to make our view look more dramatic or just generally more effective to get across whatever point it is we want to make. You've got some tools in your repertoire and you're not necessarily limited. Okay? So that's how shadows and lighting work. And I already showed you a little bit that you can adjust the azimuth and the altitude to do whatever you need to do over here. This is also where you do multi-day solar studies if that's what you're really into. It's not really what I'm into. And in Singapore, the light's kind of the same all year long anyway, so that's fucking okay. Now, what else can we do to make this cool? Well, how about the background? The background's really boring right now. And they give us the ability to add some backgrounds. You can start to adjust what's going on back there. Now you can have the sky background, which is something that it comes built in with.
which, well, to me that's, I don't know, just a little bit too much like a Cinderella album or something silly like that. Some 80s metal album.
I don't like that at all. You can also play with the gradient. And gradient on its own also kind of looks like shit. It's okay, Reza, you can admit it. It does look pretty shitty, doesn't it? But, and the reason why it looks like shit is because they put this ground color in there. So, here's an idea, guys. Don't use the ground color. I like to change the ground color to white. I'll maybe do a middle color that's like that. And then the sky color, change the sky color to a little bit of a richer blue. And say OK and apply. And then all of a sudden it starts to be a little bit more palatable. Right? Maybe. You can even change your horizon color to white and then it'll really blend nicely. And you can start to have, you can start to use what's in there. Right? Good. Not only can you use gradients, you can also use images. So let's get an image. Let's see here. Anything good there? Nope. Anything good on my desktop? That's my son. How about gosh, I had a really cool picture in here. No, not that one. Where's my pictures at? Documents. Oh, God. Pain in the ass. Ah, there it is. Death Star. Ooh. And the Death Star can loom behind you. Okay? Edric, what are you trying to get me into here? You're supposed to be a respected member of the community. It's all Edric's fault. Now, one of the things that I've always hated about Revit, and I'm sure that you do too, is how cartoony it looks. And one of the reasons it looks so cartoony is because they put those stupid lines on the edges of everything, right? I can go into graphic display options, and there's an option to turn those things off. And now all of a sudden my model looks a little less cartoony. Which to me is actually really, really, really a great thing. All of a sudden I don't have to look like, come on, you know you've been there where you looked at an image and you said, they did that in Revit. You don't have to be that guy anymore. You know, you can fool people and make them think you're working in Rhino. And ooh, I'm cool. Okay? Turn the lines off. All right? Or, this is another new one in Revit 2015, I believe. There's also the option to put in sketchy lines. If you gotta have your lines, but you don't want it to look so finished, you can have sketchy lines. Really good for the architects in the crowd. Not so good for you if I ever catch you using this. And last but not least, there's one last thing I wanted to show in here that's also kind of cool, but you've got to be careful about using it, is you can also play with transparency. I'm going to turn the sketchy lines off and say apply. You can start to play with the transparency, which can be kind of helpful to start to see different things. Okay? As you move along in the transparency scale, it gets closer and closer to wireframe. So you want to play with some of these things, but you can certainly start to make some fairly interesting images using some of these controls. Have you learned anything from me tonight, Reza?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Or else they were going to make me pay for the food. It's really, so I got to make sure that you get value out of this, okay? So sketchy lines, transparency, there you go. Another thing you can do also is there's the option to smooth lines with anti-aliasing, and that will, especially in the transparent views, make the lines a little bit crisper, which will help a little bit in making your graphics look better. Okay? Graphic display options. Awesome. Questions before I move into the last section? Anything at all?
Just want to highlight my experiences.
But we all have to do colored plans, right? Everybody wants colored plans. Is there a way we can make this sexy? Can we bring the sexy back? Yes, we can. I voted for Obama. Yes, we can. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. I love this trick. It makes me so happy. Oh, no, wait. Stop. Okay. So here's a slice of the building, right? And I'm not going to go through the whole thing of how you add color legends and all that, because I think you guys either know that already or, well, we're just not going to talk about it tonight. So here's my colors, right? And as we've already mentioned, it's pretty boring. So what can we do using some of the stuff that I've talked about today to sexy this up? Well, when architects make apply the poche too, so I'm just going to pick walls, and I'm also going to pick my structural columns, right? So structural columns and walls, and I just want the cuts, mind you, I just want the cuts, and I want the pattern for those. Let's make them black, because, well, why not? And say okay. All right. Now it's starting to read like something. Okay. But is there more? Sue, is there more? Fuck no, there's more. Well, what happens if I just turn the shadows on? All of a sudden, this very, very boring floor plan now has a little bit of depth to it. It starts to be a little bit more fun. I'm going to go to my graphic display options for a second. I'm going to go to shadows. Right now I've got cast shadows and show ambient. Let's just show the ambient shadows. Not that powerful yet because I got too much ambient light in there. Can I get... Sometimes you can get something... Sometimes you can make the ambient shadows work really well, and well, sometimes you can't. Let's just say cast shadows then, and say apply. And so this is kind of cool. All of a sudden we can, and not only that, with the lighting controls here, we can control which direction the shadow is coming from. Top left or top right. Summer solstice. If it's too much shadow, we can, we can try and shallow that up a little bit more. Or not. We can do all kinds of things. Just by turning on some shadows and adding a little bit of poche, and now all of a sudden this view, it's a little bit more interesting to look at. You can start to get a sense of what it is you're doing there. Is that good? That one, much wow, huh? Such wow. I like this doggy. I love the doggy. You gotta work him in somewhere. Hidden line views, right? So to go back to this fella here, let me change this back to a hidden line view. Let me do some other stuff here. Now I kind of just cut off the. Typically when you're just starting out with one of these guys, it looks like that, and it's really, really boring. But there's no reason why you can't have
a hidden line view, just like this, but also turn on a gradient sky. That's kind of cool. You can take a hidden line view and you can cast some shadows. It starts to get kind of interesting, right? And then not only that, let's say you wanted to, let's say pick one panel, right click, select all instances in the entire project. So now it's gone through and picked all those panels. Let's say you just wanted to override the graphics for that panel. Let's go to surface patterns and let's make it a little less intense kind of purple. And pattern it out at solid. Now all of a sudden, you know, it's still kind of muted, but it can be a very effective graphic communication tool. You know, because you don't want to get it. Sometimes you want the conversation to just be about form without really getting into materials, and it can be distracting. You can start to control these things, and there's nothing wrong with using a simple hidden line view and then just attaching some overrides. So you could, you know, another way to do this might be, I suppose you could probably override the filter for just the glass pieces. Like there's glass curtain wall elements in here, right? So those are all glazed. Override graphics and view by category, maybe. I don't know what's going to happen here. I didn't try this. So there you go. All of a sudden now it's just applied a color just to all the glazed materials in there, and it preserved the transparency for them. So you might want to do something like that. You've got some options for how you can choose to play with things if you just want to start with a hidden line template, right? Oh my. Everybody know who that guy is? Anybody follow that guy on Facebook? Yes, you do. We're going to go to the rambles later. Oh my. My God. Okay. Did you know you can create exploded views in Revit now? I think this is pretty cool, and it's very, very simple to do. Yes. Really. All you do is you select your objects, you hit the Displace Elements button, and it'll group all those objects together just for the view. Let's put this away. And blah, 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 blah. Exploded before. So here's my model, right? To do an exploded view, I mean, this is just so stupid. I'm going to select a bunch of objects. Maybe not that many. I'm going to select those objects. And then the displaced view is there, displace elements. I hit that. It'll group them all together. And I can choose to displace in the X, Y, or Z direction. So I'm going to say displace it up by 70 meters. Sound good? Ah! It's up there. Woo! Let's go and get my next level of the building. Right? Again, I just use a real simple selection. Takes for a second. Click the displacement tool again. And let's make this one 50,000 meters. 50 meters, sorry. Next batch. Displace. And there they all is. And I don't know if you can do this in a perspective view. I didn't try it. But if you want to adjust them down, you just pick that and it'll remember that that's a whole group. And you can tighten the whole thing up as you see fit. If you want, you can also do if you're feeling particularly like an anarchist. Hey, what's going on? You can also display things. You can also display things that way. Move a whole bunch of things sideways. You can pick individual objects, move them. And the other really cool thing that I like is if you pick one of these guys, you get the path. You can hit that, and it'll put some key lines for you, so you can stitch your model back together at key points if you want to do that. Do you know you can do that? Oh my. Okay, now, so that's a good one too. Wait. Oh. So now then, for my final trick of the evening. What? Oh, he's not talking to me. Okay, good. I don't come to your house and talk while you're trying to talk to your wife, pal, so keep it clean. Let's face facts. This is boring as bat shit. And how many of us do it on a regular basis? All of you do it on a regular basis. I know, because I'm the only one who doesn't that I know of. I hit him with a shoe weekly, and he still gives me bullshit like this. It's terrible. It's terrible. I'm going to show you how you can do a sectional perspective instead, because perspectives are sexy and isometrics are for engineers. Have you ever met a sexy engineer? Point taken. Okay. Isometrics are. Now the thing is, to do a perspective section takes a little bit more effort and thought behind it. But up there. Great. Let's. I'm just going to pick something in here so I can rotate the camera up a little bit. Okay, that's pretty decent, I suppose. Maybe I want it to be a little bit higher. Let me go to my camera here. I'm going to make my eye elevation closer to 30,000 and change my target to 3,000. Yeah, that's starting to look a little better. Okay, good. Dynamite. So, now, like I said, if I'm going to WT, I'm going to tile my windows, and now I can see both of them. In my perspective view, I turn on the section box. And there's my section box. And you can see when I picked it in the 3D view, it showed up in the isometric view. All I have to do is click onto my isometric view and the grips show up automatically. So now I can just drag it kind of to where I want it to be. Let's say I want to have a section through there too. Cool. Cool. And now I come back to this view. Oh my, this is starting to look kind of cool. Isn't that nicer? Isn't that great? Now just because I'm a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful man, I'm going to take this one more level higher because I like chilies, right? And so I'm never satisfied with just this plain black and white crap. What's the first thing that I hate in this drawing? The cartoony bullshit of Revit, right? We hate Revit's cartoony bullshit. To myself, shit. It's so gray. Let's say I want to give the section cuts a little bit of pop. Okay, I'll go in and all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick everything in the model and I'm gonna apply a cut pattern, and let's say it's red and solid, and say okay. Ooh. Okay, maybe not the ground. The ground is a little bit much. Clear the override, say okay. Alright. Now we're starting to get somewhere with this guy. I don't know what exactly is going on there. Oh, is that the building pad? Yeah, that's the building pad. Get out of here, you. I hate building pads. And then I think that's probably a structural foundation, a slab edge. Ugh. Sometimes to get this right, you have to say expand all, and then select them all, and then say okay. There you go. Now it gets everything. But again with that fucking tool. Sorry, that came out. Okay, now it's starting to look cool. Let's see, those, I really don't like those mullions at all. And nobody really does. Let's change those mullions, the pattern on those mullions to something a little bit more silvery and delicious. And maybe even we'll give it a Ferguson, Missouri kind of feel to it. Kind of complete white. There we go. Okay, this is starting to look better. Let's go back to my graphic display options for a second. How about some background? Let's give it some background. Let's go with my gradient that I made before. Can't do that again. Sky color. That's a terrible color for the sky. If the sky was that color, I'd panic. No? Okay. Now this thing's starting. One last thing. How about some shadows, right? They're not there. Some shadows. That's from the wrong direction. And now we got something that we might not be too afraid to show somebody. And you can send this out as a high quality rendering. You can save it just as a you can export it as just a JPEG image. You can do with it whatever you want. Is that awesome or what? Pretty awesome, huh? Now, lest anybody think that I came up with all this on my own, I didn't. Graphics that pop. Now this is where I close it out and bring it full circle. Remember I talked about Autodesk University and how it's been a very, very helpful thing for me in my career. Back in 2011, there was a class at AU called Revit for Presentation Graphics That Pop. And this was the presentation that I saw that really opened my eyes to a lot of the tips and techniques that I've shared with you tonight. If you've downloaded this PDF file, you can click on this link and it will take you to the website where you can get this. And there's some additional class materials, the presentation and the handout. The presentation and the handout are well worth your time to take a look at if this kind of stuff interests you. For people who have been my former students, you know that I send everybody to this presentation and tell you to go look it up because there's some good stuff in here. There's people. Remember I was telling you that the trees in Revit that they give you kind of suck? You can get people silhouettes and you can change the category. You can adjust the category so that they're just a transparent green color and you can have some very simple silhouettes to add scale to your models. It's got street symbols and stuff in there that you can just put in. My favorite though is the trees. He made the trees better so that they're more abstract. So depending upon whether you've set your model display to be coarse, medium, or fine, you'll get one of those three options. Another really cool thing that's in the data set for this for this presentation are these lines. That's actually one family that has a whole bunch of different commands associated with arrays. So you can have dashed lines in 3D. So if you want to make 3D diagrams of maybe for a master plan or how people might move around your building, you can use these tools to start to demonstrate and build up your 3D model. So it's well